Here are three lessons that I learned from Python that I'd like to share with you today. I think that every programming language can teach you something. The first thing I learned is just how fast I could get something done. If you go ahead and do a Google search for Zen of Python, you'll find some of the design philosophies behind Python. One of them reads, "Now is better than never." That in itself personifies what I've learned from Python, that you can get something out really quickly or you can get a little script running really, really quickly, sometimes in like 5 or 10 minutes and get stuff done. People sometimes talk about, okay, performance or whatever, it's an interpreted language, I should write it in something else. Well, a lot of times performance isn't actually that critical. A lot of times when you run Python scripts, there's going to be a lot of them where it's just going to instantly run, and where performance may not actually really be much of a concern. And you could have saved like an hour of your life just writing into Python. There's simply less code that you need to write in Python. You don't have to use like a bunch of curly brackets everywhere and do all this boilerplate and everything. Python is really nice on you. It just lets you write very simple programs and with a few lines of code do really powerful things. Python also is a batteries included language. It's very abstracted, or it can be. So you can basically pull in, I mean, the Python standard library of modules that you can pull in are just incredible. There's how many there are, how many different things that you can just get done with just the base installation of Python. But on top of that, it comes with an awesome package manager called pip, where you can bring in basically anything with pip. And I remember one time I wrote a stock app where it would grab it from using the Yahoo Finance module. I was impressed with just 3 lines of code. I was able to just get the stock price off of Yahoo Finance. That to me was so impressive. One of the things I'll mention too is perfection is paralysis sometimes. And I really think back to what I said earlier, now is better than never. Python is one of those languages that you can just really just get something done or it's very quick to test things. You can build something and, oh, okay, maybe I want to do something else, or maybe I want to do something else. It's a great language for rapid prototyping or, just writing little things that you're going to modify later on. The second is I gained an appreciation and sort of love for writing scripts from learning Python. Python in itself, I want to compare to Shell script, for example. Shell runs on Unix-based systems. Like you can create a shell script and have it run on Mac or Linux or whatever. Python runs on all of that and Windows, right? It runs anywhere that you can install Python, and that's awesome because you can just write your script and know that it's going to work pretty much everywhere. The other thing too is it was really fascinating when I was learning Django. Django has a manage.py file. That fascinated me because Python wasn't just used for creating applications and running them, but also Python was used for actually maintaining web servers. And that, if you're not familiar, manage.py in Django, you can have it run commands to build parts of your application, like build a new part of your web application, or you can run it to run migrations on your database. That just blew my mind. And I think a lot of, before Python, I think Perl was really the language that a lot of people used for that. I mean, there's other ones too. But Python has really sort of dominated a lot of projects. So even if Python isn't necessarily the primary language that's used, it's sort of a Swiss Army knife where it sort of finds itself sometimes in little, scripts or things that you'll run. It's really, really useful for that. The other thing too that's great about Python is its programmability. If you compare it to, for example, like shell scripting sometimes has problems with numbers, like doing basic math. If you tell it to do some math, it's a little kind of tricky sometimes with a shell script. What's awesome though with Python is you can do math really easily with a Python console or just a little Python application. Um, it has all the other features, like you can code classes, you can bring in other modules, you can really kind of, build a script that also is kind of like an application essentially. And it just has all those features. Python is really easy to teach as well. That's my third thing that I have for you. I've been a private tutor for the last 2 years, and I've tutored dozens of students in university. I've also done private lessons for people in programming. It's been really rewarding. And one of the things I've noticed is that Python is generally the easiest to teach. If you start somebody off in JavaScript, it takes a little bit longer. You start somebody off in C, it takes a little bit longer. I'm not saying that those are necessarily bad or whichever, but I think for beginners, one of the things there's a couple things that's awesome about Python. First is that it's instantly gratifying. It just takes less code to get a working app, like to get something on the screen, and people think, "Oh, I did something. I built a application." I think because of that, you can actually cover a lot of ground and have. I think with Python, it's a lot more entertaining in some regards. It's a lot more satisfying to see. I worked really hard. I built something, and to just see it, come to life quicker. The next thing is, as I said earlier, with Python, you write less code. So because of that, the chances of a student making errors just, statistically is less, right? They can look at, the code and stuff. I will say one gripe I have about Python is I don't always know if the indents are necessarily easier to teach. Um, Curly brackets, even though you're writing more stuff, they are a little bit more forgiving. Students sometimes forget about the indents, or they do spaces and they mix spaces with tabs or whatever. That's really common. And then they think, what? Wait, unexpected indent, I think is what it says. And that's really where I think a lot of, it's like, oh, okay, let's check our indents. Or I've done that a lot with Python. Anyway, that's my monologue for that. I appreciate you watching this. Thank you so much for listening to me opine about Python. If you have any sort of feedback or comments below, I'm actually really interested. What was your journey like with Python? If you'd like to share your story, leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next one.